In the grand theater of human desire, men often mistake sincerity for power. They believe that if they are honest, transparent, and emotionally pure, a woman will see their truth and fall into their arms. But Machiavelli, the master of human manipulation, look upon this belief and smile, not with kindness but with pity. For he knew that in both politics and seduction, purity is a mask worn by the naive, and illusion is the weapon of the wise. The art of seduction, like the conquest of empires, is not waged through truth but through perception. Machiavelli would begin by stating that every human being, regardless of gender, is driven not by what is real, but by what they wish to be real. A woman does not fall for a man's truth. She falls for the story he weaves around it. A king who seeks to rule by honesty alone will lose his throne to a man who understands theater. So too will a man lose the game of seduction if he fails to play the role his audience desires. This is the essence of the Machiavellian principle. People are enchanted not by substance, but by illusion shaped with precision. In seduction, illusion is not deception. It is artistry. A skilled man understands that to seduce is to create an atmosphere of fascination, a fog of allure through which his every word and gesture feels deliberate. He does not present himself as he is. He constructs an image that reflects what she craves to see. To the romantic woman, he becomes the poet. To the ambitious woman, he is the conqueror. To the wounded, he appears as understanding and gentle, a savior disguised in subtle strength. This is not hypocrisy. It is strategic adaptation. Just as a prince alters his behavior to suit his subjects, a seducer alters his mask to suit his audience. Machiavelli believed that human nature is not moral, but practical. He argued that people prefer the comforting lie to the uncomfortable truth, for illusion satisfies their vanity and fuels their hope. In the realm of seduction, this principle reigns supreme. A woman is not drawn to a man's honesty about his flaws, but to his mastery over them. She admires the man who appears confident, not necessarily the one who is, for appearance, when skillfully controlled, becomes reality in the eyes of the beholder. Thus, Machiavelli teaches that seduction is not about becoming the best version of yourself. It is about making her believe you are. The illusion of purity, then, is the most dangerous trap for a man who wishes to seduce. He believes that being good will make him desirable, when in truth, it makes him predictable. Goodness without mystery breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds indifference. A Machiavellian man understands that to be desired, he must remain partly hidden, his motives cloaked, his emotions controlled, his intentions unreadable. He must speak not to her logic, but to her imagination. He must be the question she cannot answer, the presence that lingers long after his departure. Machiavelli would say that love is a battlefield where the weak seek honesty and the strong master illusion. The weak confess too soon, reveal too much, beg for understanding. The strong, however, give only fragments, just enough to awaken curiosity, but never enough to satisfy it. He knows that a woman's fascination grows not from what she knows, but from what she cannot know. Mystery becomes the thread that binds desire. And yet, this illusion must never be clumsy or artificial. A man who fakes too obviously will expose his theater. The art lies in subtlety, in blending truth with fiction until neither can be separated. The Machiavellian seducer does not fabricate entire stories. He simply amplifies the most compelling parts of himself and hides the rest in elegant silence. His power lies in suggestion, not declaration. He does not say, "I am powerful." He behaves in a way that makes her feel it. He does not proclaim, "I am different." His composure makes her conclude it. The illusion must always feel earned by her observation, not imposed by his boasting. To Machiavelli, seduction is warfare disguised as poetry. Every word, every glance, every pause becomes a calculated move designed to stir emotion while concealing strategy. A man who truly understands this knows that passion is not born from chaos but from control, the control of appearance, tone, timing, and mystery. He seduces not by chasing but by orchestrating, not by begging for attention, but by commanding it through calm presence. The illusion of purity, therefore, is to be avoided not because purity itself is shameful, but because it is powerless. Power lies in paradox, the ability to appear gentle while being calculating, to seem transparent while remaining unreadable. A Machiavellian man does not reveal his full self to anyone, for exposure breeds vulnerability. Instead, he allows only fragments to shine through the armor, giving the illusion of openness while remaining untouchable within. He would remind his listeners that the most seductive men in history, Caesar, Casanova, even the rulers of Florence, understood that people crave myth more than flesh. To win hearts, one must become a story larger than life, an image that transcends the ordinary. Truth alone cannot achieve that, for truth is limited. Illusion, when crafted with precision, becomes timeless. Seduction, then, is not a plea for affection. It is the disciplined construction of desire. It is a dance between what is shown and what is hidden, a play of light and shadow, where every movement serves a purpose. A man who masters illusion becomes not just attractive, but unforgettable, because he does not merely seek attention, he controls perception. And perception, as Machiavelli teaches, is the throne upon which all power rests. In the intricate game of seduction, Machiavelli would warn that the greatest danger lies not in rejection, in overexposure. He understood that fascination is a flame that needs oxygen. Too much closeness suffocates it. The man who offers himself entirely, who becomes constantly available and predictable, strips himself of all mystery. To be always present is to become ordinary, and in the world of desire, ordinariness is death. Machiavelli, the philosopher of power, would argue that attraction obeys the same laws as political influence. Presence creates familiarity, but absence creates importance. A man's constant presence signals dependency, and dependency is the sign of weakness. The moment a woman senses that she can have you whenever she wishes, she stops wondering about you. Desire feeds not on comfort, but on uncertainty, on the gaps between what is known and what is imagined. Machiavelli understood that curiosity is the mother of control. In politics, Prince never reveals all his motives, for secrecy keeps his enemies guessing. In seduction, a man must never reveal all his emotions, for secrecy keeps her longing. The greatest seducer is not the one who gives the most attention, but the one who knows when to withdraw it with elegance. Absence is not abandonment. It is a calculated retreat. It is the art of stepping back at the very moment her interest peaks, letting silence echo louder than words ever could. When you vanish at the height of her curiosity, you become larger in her imagination. She begins to fill the void with questions, fantasies, and projections. Her mind starts working for you, building versions of you that exceed anything you could consciously portray. This is the genius of Machiavellian psychology, to control without touching, to rule through imagination rather than presence. A Machiavellian man does not chase validation through constant messaging, reassurance, or availability. He understands that scarcity multiplies value. The diamond is prized because it is rare, not because it is seen every day. Likewise, the man who appears only at moments of purpose becomes a figure of significance in a woman's mind. His time feels sacred, his attention feels earned, and his silence feels meaningful. He cultivates an aura of importance, not by arrogance but by discipline. By knowing that what is rare becomes revered, Machiavelli would compare this to the rule of a wise prince. A ruler who makes himself too accessible invites disrespect. The subjects begin to see him as one of them, forgetting his authority. But a ruler who appears rarely, surrounded by mystery and ritual, commands reverence. His absence gives weight to his presence. When he finally speaks, his words carry the force of prophecy. The same law governs desire. The man who speaks less, appears less, and withholds his presence strategically transforms every interaction into an event. She does not merely see him, she experiences him. Absence also creates emotional rhythm, a vital ingredient in seduction. When presence is constant, emotion flattens. When presence is unpredictable, emotion intensifies. A Machiavellian man uses distance as a sculptor uses shadow, to shape emotion through contrast. He understands that a heart in suspense is a heart in captivity. The alternating rhythm of attention and withdrawal keeps her tethered to uncertainty, craving the next appearance. This is not cruelty. It is psychological design. Just as a musician uses pauses to make the melody meaningful, the seducer uses silence to make emotion echo deeper. But to master absence, one must first conquer fear. The fear of losing interest, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not being enough. Weak men cling to presence because they cannot bear the silence of being unseen. Strong men, Machiavelli would say, understand that true power thrives in restraint. By withdrawing, You prove that your world does not orbit around her approval. You demonstrate sovereignty over your emotions, the rarest and most seductive form of control. A woman may desire beauty, wealth, or charm, but what she truly respects is emotional authority. The man who can disappear without panic commands both her curiosity and her respect. Absence also purifies desire. When you are not constantly available, she is forced to reflect on what you truly mean to her. Distance magnifies emotional significance, transforming simple gestures into symbols. A single message from you, after days of silence, carries the weight of 1,000 words. Every reappearance feels like an arrival, a return of something valuable. Machiavelli would call this the economy of presence. Like a wise ruler who spends his gold sparingly to preserve its value, a man spends his presence carefully to preserve his mystery. In this psychological economy, what is withheld becomes more powerful than what is given. When a man is always around, his gestures lose meaning. When he appears rarely, even small acts become monumental. This is how absence manipulates perception. It transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. It makes the simplest smile seem deliberate, the briefest glance feel profound. And in this way, the Machiavellian man becomes unforgettable, not through constant effort, but through strategic invisibility. Machiavelli knew that desire is not a straight line, but a tension, a pendulum that swings between closeness and distance. The wise seducer maintains that tension. He never lets comfort fully replace curiosity. He lets her feel his warmth, but never lets her possess it entirely. The illusion of possible access keeps her invested, while the reality of distance keeps her craving. It is a dance of approach and withdrawal, a balance of exposure and concealment, the same balance that keeps rulers powerful and lovers desired. Absence, then, becomes a silent language of power. It speaks without words, commands without aggression, and captivates without force. It tells her that your world is vast, that you are a man whose time must be earned, not assumed. It shifts the dynamic, from you seeking her attention to her seeking your presence. Through absence, the Machiavellian man turns desire into pursuit and pursuit into control. In the labyrinth of seduction, Machiavelli understood that the greatest illusion is not to make someone love you, but to make them love themselves through you. The most powerful seducers in history were not those who imposed their will upon others, those who learned to reflect the secret desires of their targets like a mirror, showing them not who they were, but who they wanted to be. In this principle lies what Machiavelli would call the dirtiest method of seduction, not because it is immoral, because it manipulates the deepest layer of human vanity. To understand this, one must first accept a hard truth about human nature. People are not drawn to others because of pure admiration or connection. They are drawn to those who amplify their own self-image. A woman, like any human being, is not intoxicated by the reality of a man, but by how she feels in his presence. If a man can make her feel intelligent, beautiful, desired, or unique, she becomes emotionally indebted to him. It is not the man she falls for, but the version of herself that she experiences when she is with him. This is the foundation of the mirror technique. Machiavelli would describe this method as psychological warfare disguised as empathy. The seducer, like a ruler studying his enemies, observes with precision. He does not speak first, he listens. He notes the tones in her voice, the themes in her stories, the wounds that hide behind her laughter. Every woman reveals what she desires most through what she criticizes or admires. The Machiavellian seducer takes mental notes, crafting a reflection so perfect that she sees her ideal self in his eyes. He becomes a projection surface for her deepest longings. The mirror technique is not about imitation, it is about transformation. The man does not mimic her, he shapes his presence to harmonize with her emotional wavelength. If she craves adventure, he becomes unpredictable. If she desires safety, he becomes composed. If she values intellect, he challenges her with thoughtful dialogue. Every action, every word, is crafted to make her believe that he understands her like no one else ever has. This illusion of understanding is the ultimate seduction, for when a woman feels seen, she opens the gates of her defenses willingly. In political terms, Machiavelli compared this to the rule of a cunning prince. A wise ruler never enforces his dominance through brute force. He wins loyalty by making his subjects believe their desires are his own. He reflects their aspirations back at them, becoming the embodiment of their collective dream. In love, the Machiavellian seducer does the same. He convinces the woman that he shares her soul, her pain, her vision of life. But it is all strategy. He does not truly merge with her. He merely constructs an illusion of emotional synchronicity so convincing that she cannot distinguish it from reality. The brilliance of the mirror technique lies in its subtlety. The seducer does not tell her what she wants to hear directly. That would expose the manipulation. Instead, he guides conversations in ways that allow her to discover what she wants to believe about him. He becomes a master of implication, suggestion, and emotional echo. When she speaks of her dreams, he listens with rapt attention and adds fragments of himself that align with her vision. She shares her disappointments. He expresses empathy so precise that it feels personal. Over time, she begins to see in him not a stranger, but an extension of her own identity. Machiavelli would argue that this technique works because it flatters the ego while bypassing the intellect. A woman might question your charm, your wealth, or your intentions, but she will rarely question her own emotions. Once she believes that you understand her at a soul level, she becomes emotionally invested in preserving that illusion. To doubt you would mean doubting her own judgment, and the human ego resists such discomfort. Thus, she will defend you, rationalize your flaws, and even pursue you, not because you are irresistible, but because she cannot bear to lose the version of herself that you reflect. This method, however, requires extraordinary discipline. The seducer must never lose himself in his creation. He must remember that he is an artist crafting illusion, not a participant drowning in emotion. He must remain detached, analytical, always one step ahead of her perception. Machiavelli would say that a man who cannot control his emotions cannot control perception, and a man who cannot control perception will never master seduction. Therefore, the mirror technique is not an act of love but of strategy, a balancing act between empathy and manipulation, sincerity and deceit. To perfect this art, one must also understand timing. The reflection must evolve gradually, mirroring her transformation as the bond deepens. If she begins as cautious and skeptical, the seducer mirrors understanding and patience. Once she grows comfortable, he introduces subtle contrasts, unpredictability, passion, a hint of danger, to keep her emotionally stimulated. This evolution ensures that she never grows bored, for she believes the relationship is deepening when in truth it is being guided. Through this method, Machiavelli exposes one of the most unsettling truths about desire. People do not want partners. They want mirrors that make them feel significant. The man who understands this wields quiet dominance, for he gives not his love, but her own reflection back to her. She feels empowered, yet she is being led. She feels seen, yet she is being studied. This is the duality of Machiavellian seduction, control disguised as connection. In the mirror technique, words are less powerful than energy. A gaze that acknowledges her essence, a silence that invites confession, a tone that matches her rhythm. These subtleties matter more than grand gestures. The seducer does not need to prove himself because his greatest weapon is perception itself. He does not fight for attention, he becomes attention. He does not demand love, he provokes self-love. In his presence, she feels illuminated, as if she has discovered a better version of herself. And so, Machiavelli would teach that to seduce effectively, one must not conquer the other's heart, but occupy their imagination. To rule emotions, one must rule reflection. The mirror technique transforms seduction from a pursuit into a psychological masterpiece. A game where the woman never realizes she is not falling for him, but for the version of herself he has so artfully created. In the theater of seduction, Machiavelli understood that emotion, not logic, is the true currency of power. Human beings are not governed by reason but by rhythm, the ebb and flow of emotional intensity. The ruler who can manipulate the emotions of his subjects can command their loyalty, and the lover who can command emotional contrast can enslave the heart. This final play, the mastery of contrast, is the ultimate Machiavellian technique of seduction, for it transforms desire into dependency, fascination into fixation. To Machiavelli, emotional control was never about suppression, it was about orchestration. Just as a skilled conductor leads an orchestra through crescendos and silences, a Machiavellian man guides a woman's emotions through calculated waves of warmth and distance, passion and restraint. chaos, and calm. This shifting dynamic keeps her in a perpetual state of anticipation, unable to predict his next move. The human mind craves certainty. It is addicted to surprise. When she cannot anticipate him, she begins to feel him more deeply. Her emotions become a landscape shaped by his timing. Machiavelli would explain that consistency breeds comfort, and comfort breeds indifference. Most men fail in seduction because they are predictable. They offer emotional stability too early, mistaking safety for attraction. But desire does not grow in safety. It thrives in tension. A woman who knows what to expect will soon stop caring. The Machiavellian man understands this truth and crafts an experience that oscillates between extremes, ensuring that her emotional investment never settles into complacency. He is warm when she expects distance, distant when she expects warmth, and always just unpredictable enough to remain the axis of her thoughts. This emotional rhythm mirrors the art of ruling. In politics, a prince cannot maintain order through kindness alone, nor through cruelty alone. He must alternate between fear and favor, punishment and mercy. The contrast between these emotions creates awe, a psychological tension that binds subjects to his authority. Likewise, in love, emotional contrast binds a woman's attention to the man who provides it. He becomes the source of both pleasure and pain, stability and storm. The duality that makes her unable to forget him. It is not his presence she craves, but the uncertainty of it. The power of emotional contrast lies in its unpredictability. When a man behaves in a perfectly rational, consistent manner, he becomes easy to categorize. When his actions defy simple understanding, when he shows depth, mood, and mystery, he transcends familiarity. A woman cannot reduce him to a pattern. Therefore, she keeps thinking about him, trying to decode his mind. This mental fixation is the foundation of emotional addiction. Machiavelli would call this strategic inconsistency, a form of psychological warfare in which the target's mind becomes a battlefield of desire and confusion. However, Machiavelli would also warn that emotional contrast must never become emotional chaos. The purpose is not to cause suffering, to maintain fascination. A seducer who abuses emotion loses control, for pain without meaning breeds resentment, not devotion. The art lies in balance, knowing when to withdraw and when to reappear, when to ignite passion and when to let silence speak. Each action must feel natural, not manipulative. A Machiavellian man does not force emotion. He provokes it with subtlety, allowing her to believe that what she feels is spontaneous. The illusion of authenticity is the key to control. He would emphasize that timing is everything. After moments of deep connection, distance feels unbearable, and thus more powerful. After a period of withdrawal, even a small gesture of warmth feels monumental. The seducer plays with this timing deliberately, creating emotional contrast that amplifies every interaction. Just as a painter uses both light and shadow to create depth, the Machiavellian man uses tenderness and tension to sculpt emotion. His mastery lies in understanding that passion is born not from constant affection, but from the fear of losing it. In the political sphere, Machiavelli taught that fear and love must be balanced. Fear to maintain respect, love to inspire loyalty. In seduction, the principle is the same. If a man is too gentle, he becomes dull. If he is too dominant, he becomes oppressive. The Machiavellian seducer walks the fine line between allure and authority. He makes her feel protected, but not in control, desired, but not entitled. Each encounter leaves her both satisfied and uncertain, comforted yet intrigued. This contrast keeps her emotions alive, for the human heart cannot resist what it cannot fully predict. Machiavelli would further note that emotional contrast also amplifies memory. The mind does not retain stability. It remembers moments of intensity. The man who evokes only comfort is easily forgotten. The one who evokes both pleasure and ache becomes unforgettable. When she recalls him, she feels not just what he said, but what he made her feel. Feelings, once imprinted, become stronger than logic. She may tell herself to move on, but her emotions have already become addicted to the pendulum he created. In this sense, the Machiavellian seducer does not merely win affection, he shapes memory itself. This method, while powerful, demands self-control. Emotional contrast cannot be performed by those who are enslaved by their own feelings. The seducer must be both participant and observer, capable of expressing emotion while remaining detached. He plays the game, but he does not drown in it. His awareness gives him dominance, his restraint gives him elegance. To command another's heart, he must first command his own. Machiavelli would say that passion is a fire, useful for conquest, dangerous for rulers. The wise man uses it as a tool, not as a master. Through emotional contrast, the Machiavellian man turns love into art and attraction into allegiance. He becomes both the calm and the storm, both safety and danger. He is not loved because he is perfect, but because he is unforgettable. His charm does not come from his words, but from the emotional world he creates. A world in which a woman feels more alive than she does without him. She may not understand why she desires him, but she will feel that life is dimmer in his absence. This is the final play of seduction, the transformation of desire into dependency through the orchestration of emotional contrast,